like Sunday morning.
Here comes the sun.
Stream now on the free CBS News app.
Tonight, Eye on America. Could this clean energy source meet the rising computer-driven demand for electricity? Then the list of Medicare drugs expected to drop in price, and how a camp for sick children suddenly had enough room for everyone on the CBS Evening News.
Hello, I'm Nancy Cordes in Washington. Welcome to America Decides. Former President Donald Trump is still holding a press conference at his golf club in New Jersey right now. This is his second time speaking to reporters in a week. He said Vice President Harris's economic policies are causing a catastrophe. He's expected to take questions from reporters soon. He's been speaking for about 20 minutes, but has not started taking questions yet. Instead, he has been using this time to deliver what he billed as economic remarks, but really he's been using that framework of the economy to make a series of untrue claims about his opponent, Kamala Harris. For instance, he said that she wants to turn America into a communist country. He said she wants to get rid of private health care, and he said she wants to abolish coal, oil, and natural gas. None of that is true. He has also been making a series of over-the-top claims, including that Kamala Harris broke the economy, broke the world, destroys everything she touches, and that there will be a 1929-style crash if she is elected. So that gives you a little bit of a flavor of what we've been listening to so far. Let's now take a listen to see what he's talking about now.
Had no way of getting them back. And I said, I want to get all of the MS-13 in particular out of our country, bring them back to where they came from. A general said, sir, that won't be possible. Why? Because they blocked the airports, they blocked the roads, they blocked everything. You can't do it. I said, so they're making a concerted effort? Yes, sir, they're making a concerted effort. We can't do it. They put planes on the runway so we can't land the planes, sir. And the same thing with the roads. They block up the roads. So if we have buses coming in, they block up the roads. They're totally blocked, and they're terrible. It's been that way for years, sir, all the way back to Bush. It's been that way for years. And I said, well, how much do we pay them in terms of economic development and aid? Sir, we pay them $750 million. I said, that's okay. Call them immediately and tell them we're not paying them anymore. And the following morning, I got a call from the three main culprits. Sir, I'd like to speak to you because I don't understand what the problem is. I said, well, you've sent us gang members, and they send them. Remember that. They send them. They said, you sent us gang members, you send us killers, and you send us drug dealers, and you send us horrible people, and when we want to bring them back to your country, you won't accept them. And that's under President Obama and all the way through. And therefore, you're in default. You are in total default of the money that we send you. And we're not going to send you the money anymore. You're not getting any of the $750 million and more. We're not giving you.
So you've been listening to former President Donald Trump at his golf club in Bedminster, New Jersey, talking there about immigration. We'll go back to him if and when he starts taking questions. But for now, I want to bring in our CBS News political director, Fin Gomez. Fin, thanks so much for being here. Tell me a little bit about the strategy of having the former president hold two news conferences in a week, neither in a battleground state, not on the campaign trail, but first at his home in Florida, Mar-a-Lago, and now at his golf club in Bedminster. What is the goal with these press conferences?
I'm being told that this is an attempt to focus on the issues and try to contrast where they are on their platform, what they, meaning the Trump campaign, the former president in the Trump campaign, versus Vice President Harris, especially with her speech today with President Biden on lowering prescription drug prices, but also on tomorrow, ahead of tomorrow's speech in North Carolina, where the Democratic nominee is going to set as you know, a speech outlining her economic policies, right? And I think this is an attempt, after several bad weeks of headlines on the Trump side, where he was really attacking, the crowd, the sizes of their crowds, attacking her race, attacking her intelligence, to focus more on issues that they think are central to really showcasing that contrast between the two campaigns.
You can really see in his remarks the war that is going on between what he would prefer to talk about and what the entire Republican Party would like him to talk about, and is saying very loudly. They want him to talk about the economy. They feel like they've got the upper hand on that issue. He wants to go after Kamala Harris. And so what you see is him doing both. He is talking about economic issues to some extent. He's talking about inflation, but then he gets into these personal attacks that Republicans, by and large, seem to agree are not going to be helpful to him.
Right, absolutely. I think that's something that, and that's something you've seen also in the most recent polling that we've seen this past week, even before this past week, where Harris has really moved up. We've seen her really generating a lot of momentum, not only nationally in these national polls that we've seen, but also in these key battleground states. So 7 battleground states, and so they essentially are saying that they have to do something. People close to Trump are saying that he has to do something to sort of change the dynamic. I think it's interesting also that today is also the day that he announced some members of his 2016 campaign are now joining back into his campaign, including Corey Lewandowski, his former co-campaign manager in 2016, who, interestingly enough, Nancy said today, let Trump be Trump, which again goes against the recent criticism and advice he's been getting from those close to him now in the campaign. So it'll be interesting to see which Trump we see in the next couple weeks.
Right. What does it say about the state of the campaign that Corey Lewandowski is being brought back into the fold? And what, if anything, does it mean for the people who are currently at the top of the campaign? Could they be on their way out?
Look, there's been a lot of chatter about that, about some of those folks surrounding Trump now. Look, he has said publicly that he's not looking to make any changes, but we have seen criticism coming from the right, from the MAGA base towards some of those top leadership, those in the top campaign leadership positions. And it is extremely notable to me that Corey Lewandowski, again, not only Corey Lewandowski, but Taylor Budowich, who came from the Super PAC, who's also a bit of a flamethrower himself, and more aligned with that MAGA base. So will Trump be more MAGA Trump, or will it be this sort of disciplined Trump that we've been hearing about in the early part of this cycle? So
this is maybe Trump pushing back on all those voices he's hearing who are saying, hey, we need you to tone it down. That's obviously just not him. Right.
And if you recall, like before any significant staffing change when he was at the White House, it always was precipitated by, not precipitated, but you always heard essentially him defending that person before that person was eventually let go.
Yeah, that's a good point. Good reminder. Finn, stand by, because we're going to want to talk to you again after the president takes questions there in Bedminster, former president. But for now, switching gears, Vice President Harris made her first appearance with President Biden since he dropped out of the race today. Willie James Inman joins us now from the White House to talk about that. Okay, Willie, Harris and Biden spoke about these new drug prices in front of a raucous crowd. These are the prices that have been negotiated by Medicare to bring certain drug prices down for seniors. Talk about this issue and how important it is to her campaign.
Hey there, Nancy. Well, 10 drugs in total were negotiated by the Biden administration to bring those prices down for consumers. I'll note that this doesn't go into effect, those new prices, rather, until 2026. But the Biden administration celebrating this move in something that they have been working on for quite some time. In fact, officials and Vice President Kamala Harris herself talked about that tie-breaking vote to bring about the Inflation Reduction Act, which the president signed into law that put this proposal and put this policy in place. And this is part of Vice President Harris's campaign as well. In fact, tomorrow, as Finn said, she's going to lay out some economic policies that would also include reducing those prices for prescription drugs, groceries. She's going to talk about food, those things that are simply too high, cost too much for many Americans across this country. She's going to go after the food industry, the grocery industry, also meat processors are something that she's going to talk about, empowering the FTC to essentially monitor all of this price gouging going on and these mergers and acquisitions. That's something that she's going to put forward in terms of a 100-day plan for an administration, a Harris administration, if she were to win the election.
Willie, when I was watching the event this afternoon, it really did feel like a changing of the guard. You had Vice President Harris speaking first, the president standing behind her. Now that they have held this event, which was the first since he dropped out of the race, how much more should we expect to see Biden on the campaign trail?
Yeah, I think your assessment, Nancy, is spot on. I mean, you saw these two candidates standing side by side on the stage there, holding hands, raising their hands, like this was a political moment. Although this was a White House official event, it very much sounded like a rally. I mean, they were greeted by not only those supporters in the room where they spoke, but they went to an overflow room to talk with several supporters there at the event. I anticipate we will see the president on the campaign trail. In fact, he addressed this earlier this week. He talked about visiting the state of Pennsylvania, which is really key to a Harris victory. He talked about touring the state with Governor Josh Shapiro there, who was also on the short list to be the vice president's running mate. He didn't, of course, make the final pick, but still, nonetheless, the president says he will campaign in the state of Pennsylvania or wherever else the vice president will have him campaign in other states. But the Harris campaign really hasn't given much in terms of where we can see them on the campaign trail or where President Biden will campaign. But he certainly has put himself out there, not only with this event, this White House official event, but saying that he will visit the battleground state of Pennsylvania soon to campaign for the vice president, Nancy.
Interesting. And the vice president will be back on the road tomorrow in North Carolina. Willie James Inman, Finn Gomez, thanks so much. We'll be talking to you soon. And mark your calendars. CBS News will be hosting a debate between vice presidential candidates Tim Walz and J.D. Vance on October 1st. Walz publicly accepted CBS News' invitation yesterday, and Vance did the same this morning. So that will be one to watch. Some of the most expensive drugs in the U.S. will be much more affordable beginning in 2026. Coming up, the Secretary of Health and Human Services will take us inside the White House's negotiations. We are also standing by, waiting for former President Trump to take questions from reporters. When he does, we'll go back to Bedminster. Stay with us. You're streaming America Decides.
Coming up, our series. Wait a minute. Tom, is that you working the camera?
Keep leaning out of your close-up.
Your morning routine just got better. CBS Mornings, weekdays at 7.
I had progressively fallen deeper into the world of online sports betting.
The risk is the rush.
What do you think is driving the spike in popularity?
I think it's legality.
If it's legal, I'm going to use it. There are ways to bet when you are 18.
We've created an epidemic of child gambling.
You can't walk into a male dormitory in a college campus without sports betting happening.
It's America's most neglected problem.
I used sports betting as a way to escape, when in reality, I'm choosing self-destruction. Whatever I had left, it was gone.
The purpose of the industry is to get you to play to extinction. And that means until all your money is gone.
Go to the ends of the earth. Reach for the stars.
Yeah, I just took off. That kind of thing.
Oh, that's pretty good.
Because there's always something new under the sun on CBS Sunday morning.
An original documentary from CBS reports.
That Desired Farm is a wonderful place to raise children, and it still is.
Promises broken.
Black Americans have been the target of racism and discrimination pretty much from the time they acquired ownership in the land.
Costing black farmers hundreds of billions in generational wealth.
They did everything to make sure we were run off that land.
But communities are uniting to continue the fight.
Collective ownership is powerful.
To keep their land and their dreams alive.
To watch my children play on land that we own means everything.
So land is power.
Most definitely.
40 Acres and a Mule, now streaming on the free CBS News app.
People with developmental disabilities were once sequestered by the hundreds of thousands in institutions.
Many of our fellow citizens are suffering tremendously because lack of attention, lack of imagination, lack of adequate manpower.
Disability activists have since torn down barriers blocking them from living at home or in the community.
We conclude that Title II of the ADA requires states to
to provide community-based treatment for persons with mental disabilities.
But of the 16,000 people who remain in state-operated institutions, half are in 5 states, and Illinois is one of them.
I don't want to live in the institution. It makes me feel discriminated against.
Do you think there are people living in institutions in Illinois that don't need to be living there?
Yeah, because they're proving it as soon as they get out.
Welcome back to America Decides. We're tracking a new wave of political enthusiasm among South Asian Americans. For the first time, they'll be represented at the top of a presidential ticket with Vice President Kamala Harris. Tomorrow, she will hold a rally in North Carolina where South Asians are the largest and fastest growing Asian voting bloc. To talk more about this, our Chanel Call joins us now. Chanel, I know you've been doing a deep dive. Thanks so much for joining us. How has this community responded to Harris entering the race?
Nancy, thanks for having me. There is so much energy around this. I mean, South Asian grassroots organizers from across the country that I've been speaking with in the last couple of weeks say they have never seen this level of enthusiasm, of energy, of excitement around an election. We've seen record donations, record turnout, and record representation. And speaking of representation, it's not just about Kamala Harris. We're seeing other big South Asian names emerge. Nikki Haley, Vivek Ramaswamy, Usha Vance, also just this cycle rising to the national political conversation. We were in North Carolina last week, and I had a chance to speak with a young voter, someone who is of South Asian descent and voting for the first time in a presidential election this November. And she talked a little bit to me about what it feels like to see her culture represented on a presidential ticket.
What does this all mean to you? I just think the fact that we could have someone who looks like me in office. Sorry, I'm like tearing up.
And you know, that resonance, that connection can also be seen, Nancy, online. I'm sure you've seen some of these memes, Lotus for POTUS. And if you didn't know this already, Kamala means lotus in Sanskrit. There's also Kamala Kisath, which means we're with Kamala.
Wow, and you could really feel the emotion and enthusiasm in that young woman's voice. Give us a sense, Chanel, of how important this emerging voting bloc is. How large is it?
Yeah, so Indian Americans are now the largest and fastest growing group of Asian voters. And in 2020, that block of voters actually exceeded the presidential margin of victory, which of course means their vote could be deciding this November. And while about 40% of Asian Americans lean left, almost all of them, 97%, say they prioritize policy over identity. So very much up for grabs.
Right, and with any voting bloc, you know, no voting bloc is unanimous. There are always variations between voters, but based on your conversations and your research, what issues are most important to South Asians?
Right. So like a lot of other Americans, the economy is going to be top of mind this election. But you mentioned this community, like a lot of others here in America, is not a monolith. So we know that there are so many different religions, so many different countries that are part of the American South Asian community. And because of that, they have a lot of different opinions. For example, the war in Gaza. Take a listen. What does Kamala Harris need to say to win your vote?
A ceasefire in the war.
And what if she doesn't say that?
Then I think a lot of the Muslim population, at least I can speak for, and the Palestinian population, a lot of them have chosen not to vote.
And Nancy, immigration is also a really big issue for many South Asians. When I was speaking to a few when we were in North Carolina, they said to me, look, there are a lot of people that, for example, moved here from India. They immigrated here. They went through all of the right processes. They say they followed all the rules. And when they see what's happening on the southern border, they don't like it.
That's fascinating. So that means that their votes could be up for grabs by either side. So are the campaigns taking notice? What are they doing to try to attract these voters?
So this is really interesting, Nancy. In North Carolina, 80% of Asian Americans had never even been contacted by a party before 2016. But of course, as South Asians are sort of emerging as this growing influential voting bloc, you are seeing the campaigns, both Trump and Harris, starting to pay attention. Both campaigns told me that they value the South Asian vote, and the Harris campaign specifically is now having this outreach program where they're trying to reach South Asian voters where they're at.
That's so fascinating. Chanel Call, thank you so much. And we're going to see more of your reporting tomorrow on CBS Morning. So we're looking forward to that. Thanks so much. We're still waiting for President Trump to take questions from reporters. He's been speaking for about 40 minutes now at his Bedminster Golf Resort. We're going to bring you there live when he does start taking those questions. For now, you're streaming America Decides. We'll be right back.
On our places, bright, shiny faces.
When you wake up in the morning, we want to be your go-to team.
Nate has one of the quickest minds I've ever seen.
Tony has a way of making people feel comfortable.
Gail has this unbelievable knack to ask the question that you're asking at home.
I've been told I could talk to a tree, and that's pretty much true.
I don't go to work in the morning. I go for coffee with my two good friends, and we talk about the world.
Your morning routine just got better. CBS Mornings, weekdays at 7.
It didn't seem like anything could happen, because nothing ever happens in East Palestine, but it did.
Authorities released toxic fumes from 5 derailed train cars.
Resident, please evacuate.
Acute bronchitis due to chemical fumes.
Did you ever have these problems before the derailment?
No, ma'am.
This neighborhood's not safe no more.
We can assure the community that there's not vinyl chloride entering their communities.
Then why are there so many people feeling these various symptoms of bloody noses or difficulty breathing or bronchitis?
That's a hard question to answer.
We're talking about one of the most blatant releases of a mixture of some of the most toxic chemicals that we've seen in America.
I feel like now I have a duty to warn other communities. If my daughter has to watch me die of cancer, at least it saves someone else. This case.
It's like a screenplay, something straight out of Hollywood.
But it's not fiction. It's 48 hours.
Human remains found this week.
4 families shattered.
There's no physical evidence.
The mystery would haunt investigators for years.
There's some questions that have to be asked and need to be answered.
Like a John Grisham novel.
A gripping true crime original. 48 hours. Now streaming on the free CBS News app.
Stories that inform.
You can be really old at 60, and you can be really young at 85.
Inspire.
How do we unlock the power within ourselves to be who we want to be?
And brighten your day.
The best part of fame is making people feel good. Always send the people home happy.
Make every day a little more like Sunday morning.
Here comes the sun.
Stream now on the free CBS News app.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to our Dragon capsule here in space.
Sightseers in space, the thrill of a lifetime.
Seeing the Earth from space, it was so exhilarating.
But the risks that come with the territory.
There have been 4 fatal accidents. That's a 1% fatal accident rate.
Might make you look before you launch.
If you had 1 out of 100 airplanes falling out of the sky, we'd have a public crisis.
Space tourism, now streaming on the free CBS News app.
The White House says it has, quote, beat Big Pharma after Medicare reached agreements with drug manufacturers to lower the prices of 10 of the most expensive drugs in the United States. According to the Department of Health and Human Services, Americans will save about $100 billion over 10 years as a result of these negotiations. However, these new prices will not go into effect until 2026. Health and Human Services Secretary Xavier Becerra is here to delve into all of this and more. His agency oversees Medicaid and Medicare. Hello to you, Mr. Secretary. Thanks so much for joining us. You were right in the middle of all of this. So take us into the negotiations that led to these new drug prices. What were the talks like? Were some drug companies easier to negotiate with than others?
Nancy, it helps when the team is prepared. We did a lot of homework. We got a lot of information. We spoke to a lot of people. And so when we went in, we were fairly prepared, and that made for some good conversations. We made some offers and counter offers on both sides. And what we're able to do is get this done on the timeline Congress set for us, and 10 drugs, 10 negotiations, 10 reduced prices. That's a good a mark, and I think it's a good omen for what can come when it comes to drug negotiation.
Why these 10 drugs in particular, Xarelto, Jardiance, Eliquis, what have you, and why were you able to secure, say, a 79% reduction in price for some drugs, like the diabetes drug Januvica, and then a smaller price reduction of 38% for something like a blood cancer drug Imbruvica?
So the why those 10, Congress was pretty clear in its direction in the law on how to select the drugs. The 10 most expensive drugs in the Medicare program, of the 3,500 plus drugs, these are the 10 most expensive. So expensive that just those 10 out of more than 3,500 take up more than a fifth of all the costs that are spent on drugs in the Medicare program. And so these are some familiar names, and they're very important drugs to many people: diabetes, heart disease, stroke, kidney failure, all the types of conditions that really are critical, cancer. And so when it came to the negotiations, we took a number of things into account. And I must, again, remind you that very rarely do you pay sticker price for anything, whether it's prescription medication or whether it's a car at a dealership or whether it is the clothes you're going to buy in the department store. You usually can get it for far better price, especially if you can negotiate. And now that we can negotiate, we got a far better price.
Have you already identified the next 10 drugs that you want to negotiate? Are they just the next 10 most expensive after these?
We will be announcing that by February of next year. CMS, our Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services folks, our team will go through the same process to identify the next set of drugs, and we will announce that, and we're going to be transparent as we were with this first set of drugs.
Secretary Becerra, how much difference is this going to make for seniors when you already have a $2,000 annual cap on prescription drug costs that is going to go into effect next year anyway?
Yeah, Nancy, that's a great question, because people are going to begin to realize just how fantastic this Inflation Reduction Act by President Biden and Vice President Harris really is. Because it's not just that today insulin is capped at $35 for a full month's supply for people on Medicare, which is big news already. It's not just that today the overall total amount that you'll pay out of pocket is about $3,500. And for folks who are on a cancer drug, for example, $3,500, it could be 1 or 2 months worth of that cancer drug. But the fact that in 2025, in just a few months, the overall total cap that you can spend on drugs out of pocket will be $2,000. That's going to be a great thing. But here now with the negotiations, what we get to do is not just save the Medicare program a lot of money. In this case, just 1 year of negotiation on 10 drugs, it's about $6 billion. On top of that, there are the savings that Americans on Medicare will save by not having to pay as much out of pocket, because some of these drugs are pretty expensive out of pocket. Sometimes you have to pay 25, 30% of the cost of the drug. And so that could add up. The fact that that will occur, the savings will occur for out-of-pocket expenses as well. We estimate about $1.5 billion for the Americans who use those particular drugs on Medicare. That's savings that stays in their pocket on top of the $6 billion that we're saving the Medicare program. Good stuff. But overall, it's everything the Inflation Reduction Act does that really will help Americans when it comes to drug costs.
Right, a savings for Medicare is a savings for taxpayers. Secretary Becerra, you were at the event in Maryland today that President Biden and Vice President Kamala Harris held together. Tell me a little bit about your working relationship with Vice President Harris. How extensive has the relationship between the two of you been over the past few years?
The Vice President and I have worked very closely. Our teams have worked very closely since we've both been here in Washington, D.C. in the administration. Remember, the Vice President was our point person on reproductive rights. And so she's been out there. I've been out there because Health and Human Services has been impacted by this. We've worked together on maternal health because we've got a real big focus on improving the condition, health condition for women and their babies. And that's something that the vice president has been on top of as well. So on many occasions, we've been to the same parts of the country working together, and we've focused on some of the same issues. I've known her since she was senator. I've known her since she was the attorney general. I took over as attorney general of California when she became the senator for the state. And so we've worked together for a long time, long working relationship. I've known her well, thrilled for her. And now we know she's going to focus on some of the things that HHS considers priorities.
You mentioned that you're the former Attorney General of California. You're also the former congressman from California. I know you've been mulling a bid for governor of California in a couple of years. Is there any news you'd like to make here on America Decides?
Well, if I were to make news here today, Nancy, you would put me in real trouble with the law, because when you are working in the federal government under the law called the Hatch Act, I can't be out there talking about doing campaigns and doing political stuff. So I am secretary, and I'm thrilled that the president gave me a chance to do this. I will continue to be secretary as long as that lasts. After that, we'll see. But I appreciate your asking. It's a pretty rewarding thing for folks to say, "Hey, are you thinking of doing this or that?" And when it's something like governor or secretary of the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, that's a nice little treat.
Well, when you are ready and able to talk about it, we hope you'll come back. Secretary Xavier Becerra, thanks so much. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
And we want to take you back now to former President Trump's press conference, where he is now taking questions from reporters. Let's listen in.
What advice, if any, you're giving him about a ceasefire, about ending this war?
The last time I saw him was at Mar-a-Lago, and he came with his wife and a large group of people. And we had a very good relationship with him and with Israel. Again, this would never have happened. October 7th would have never happened, would have never, ever happened. And he asked for the meeting. We had the meeting. It was about 2 hours, 2.5 hours long. And I expect I might be talking to him, but I haven't since then. No.
Did you encourage him not to take a ceasefire deal? Did you give him any advice about ending the war?
No, he knows what he's doing. I did encourage him to get this over with. You want to get it over with. It has to get over with fast. But have victory, get your victory, and get it over with. It has to stop. The killing has to stop. Yes, please.
Mr. President. Thank you, President Trump. You've spoken very passionately about how God saved your life. And I'm wondering, have you put much thought into why God saved your life? As in, for what purpose has he been shielding and protecting you?
So, I don't know if you heard the question. You've spoken about God saving your life. That I've spoken passionately about it. And something happened, because that was a miracle. I never looked that way. The audience was massive, and it was in front of me. I never have that particular graph. That was a graph on, as you all know now, that it's very, I think everyone knows it very well, but it showed the great numbers on illegal immigration. It was the lowest point we've ever had. And it was one that I use less than 20% of the time. It's always at the end of the speech, not at the beginning of the speech. And it's always on the left side, not the right side. And yet, for some reason, I called it. It's not on a teleprompter. I do things largely without a teleprompter, frankly, because it's hard to hold an audience if you're going to go for an hour and a half or 2 hours reading a script. And I just talked about it, and I moved to my right, turned sharply to my right, ping. And if I didn't do that, I'm not here with you. So, yeah, God has something to do with it. It's a miracle, and God had something to do with it. And maybe it's we want to save the world. This world is going down. This world is going down. So it could be. But I believe that. I believe that. My sons are very good shooters. They're like scratch golfers, better, relatively speaking, with shooters, great shooters. And Eric and Don both told me from 130 yards. I said, well, that's pretty far away, isn't it? They said, no, that's like a 1-foot putt with, weapons like the one being used. Plus, he was a good shooter. This guy was a good shooter. He went to the range and shot a lot, and he was supposed to be a pretty good shooter. They said a bad shooter would hit the target almost 100% of the time. So something happened. And I have to say the Secret Service sniper did an amazing job. He had 5 seconds to find the target and hit the target, and he hit the target within, think of this, 5 seconds. And he was much further away because he was over here, and this other person was over there. So you have to give credit. And I have to also say about the Secret Service, when I was hit, I knew it because when I touched, there was blood pouring all over my hand. I said, I guess I know what that is. And I was going down for protection. And they were screaming, get down, get down. There was bullets. And those Secret Service guys were, and person, Kate, they were on top of me in a matter of, I think, 3 seconds. It was time dead. And bullets were coming out. I would hear the bullet. I didn't realize you could hear it, but now I know very well. Those bullets were going right over my head. They were there and very brave. There was nobody that said, I'm not going to be going there. They just, they were there very quickly, and they were very brave. And there were mistakes made, obviously. He shouldn't have been up there. The roof should have been taken care of. And there were mistakes made. There's no question about it. But there was a lot of bravery also. We have to remember that. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. I'm going to talk about credit card debt for just a second. You've got all these items.
A record.
It's a record.
Credit card.
48% up. And many families going into debt just to pay for groceries.
Yeah.
What's your message to Americans right now that you can make America affordable again?
Well, I would say my message to them. So he said, credit card debt is at the all-time high. It's never been like this. What's your message to America? How are we going to solve that, and what will they do? You know what I think they should do? They should, on November 5th or sooner, if it's early voting, which largely it is, which is ridiculous. We should have one-day voting, paper ballots. We should have voter ID, and we should have proof of citizenship, because people are voting and people are going on now without citizenship. But we should do it, and maybe we'll be able to get that done, too. It's one of the things I want to do. But my message to them would be very simple. Vote for Trump, and we're going to fix the problem. We're going to get it fixed. We'll get it fixed.
Follow-up question,
yes,
if I could. Kamala's been promising on day one, I'll do this. And for basically 4 years, she's promised this day one.
Yeah.
What will you do on day one to turn this country around?
So she is saying when she gets in, she's in now. And especially with Biden, because, I mean, he's not in the best of shape. But you know what? She's in there now. She can do anything she wants. And she's still saying, if you elect me, I'll do this, I'll do... Why didn't she do it? Here's my one question. It's the easiest question. Because she complains about everything. Why didn't she do it? That's all I ask. On day one, we're going to drill, baby, drill, and we're going to close the border, and we're going to let people come in, but they're going to come in legally. They're going to come into our country legally. But on day one, we're going to do many things. You know, I can do a lot of things at one time. But the question's often is, what's the first thing you're going to do? I would say we have a tie. We're going to close the border. We're going to stop the millions of people coming in, and we're going to take all of the criminals that have come in, and we know every one of them. I know. And the local police know better than anybody else. They're going to work with us. I've spoken to a lot of the sheriffs, every police, virtually every law enforcement group in America has endorsed Trump. I don't think anybody's endorsed Kamala. Not one. I don't think anybody's endorsed them. And you know that better than anybody. In Florida, all over California, they've endorsed me. We have the relationship I have with law enforcement. And these are great people, and people that we have to really cherish and respect and let them do their job and protect them. And you'll always have a bad apple in everything. You have bad apples as reporters. That I can tell you many. I'd say about 80%. But you're always going to have bad apples. But you have very, very few when you look at it. Very, very few. You have to let them do their job. You have to protect them. But basically, we're going to drill, baby, drill. We're going to get the energy prices down almost immediately, and we're going to close the border, and we're going to get the crooked ones out, the bad ones out, and we're going to let a lot of people come in, because we need more people, especially with AI coming and all of the different things, and the farmers need, everybody needs. But we're going to make sure that they're not murderers, killers, drug dealers, and the kind of people that we have largely coming in right now. Okay?
Mr. President, many of your allies who want you to win in November say your current strategy isn't working, that you need to stop with the personal attacks on Kamala Harris and deliver a more disciplined message. Do you agree? And also, you added more people to your campaign today. Yeah. Is that a sign of a shifting strategy?
No, I think it's a sign of we want to close it out. We have great people. Susie is fantastic, as you know, and Chris is fantastic. They're leading it. Corey Lewandowski's coming in. He'll be, personal envoy, or he'll be at some level. They're going to be, they're doing a great job. Look, we've taken, with all of the abuse we've taken from the fake news media, all of this horrific abuse we take, and all I want to do is make the country good. All I want to do is have strong borders and good education. We want to have choice for education. So important, so many different things. You would think it would be the other way. We rebuilt the military. We did so many great things. But that's the way it's been for Republicans, and I guess more so for me than anybody in history, and that's okay. Because we're leading in the polls. For the most part, we're leading in the polls. We were leading Biden by a lot. We're leading now. But I think when she's exposed, I think we're going to beat her by a lot more than we would have beaten Biden by, because he had a little group of people that have been voting for him for a long time. She doesn't have that. People don't know who she is. As far as the personal attacks, her because of what she's done to the country. I'm very angry at her that she'd weaponized the justice system against me and other people. Very angry at her. I think I'm entitled to personal attacks. I don't have a lot of respect for her. I don't have a lot of respect for her intelligence, and I think she'll be a terrible president. And I think it's very important that we win. And whether the personal attacks are good, bad, I mean, she certainly attacks me personally. She actually called me weird. He's weird. It was just a soundbite. And she called J.D. and I weird. He's not weird. He was a great student at Yale. He went to Ohio State, graduated in 2 years, at the top of his class, and all of these different things. And we have this guy that's running a failed, really a very failed state, who's had a terrible career. I mean, you have him saying they're weird. No, he's a weird guy. And she's weird in her policy. Who wouldn't want to have strong borders? Who doesn't want to have lower taxes? You know, all my life I've watched as politicians campaigned, and I've always been on, you know, for the most part on the other side, on the side that these people are on. And they always talked about, we're going to reduce taxes. This is the only campaign I've ever heard where they're saying, we're going to increase your taxes. And then people say they're going to vote for him? I don't know. So I don't think so. I don't think people know who she is yet. When people, because really people didn't know. You can ask the man on the street. I saw it on one of the shows today. They asked the man on the street, what's the last name of Kamala? Nobody knew. It's Harris. Nobody knew the last name. I don't even use it because nobody knows who I'm talking about. People don't know who she is. She's a radical left socialist. But beyond that, I mean, she's way beyond socialism, who's going to destroy our country. And when they find out, I think you're going to see something. But right now, even not knowing her, and with all of the, like the cover of Time magazine, they didn't put a picture. They got a great artist to do it. What was that all about? You know, what was that all about? The whole thing is crazy. I just want to win for the country. Some people say, oh, why don't you be nice? But they're not nice to me. They want to put me in prison, you know, just so you understand. You know, they tell me I should be nice. They want to put me in prison. It's never happened before in the history of our country. I did nothing wrong. I have crooked judges. I have crooked prosecutors. And they're all Democrats, all Democrat areas, other than in Florida, where you had a brilliant judge who ruled in my favor. I won the case, the documents case, won it in its entirety. And Jack Smith, deranged Jack Smith, suffered a defeat. But in New York City, everything's clubhouse, everything. I know it very well. I grew up there. I know it very well. And we have a very crooked system. And it's one of the reasons that New York is dying. Nobody wants to come in. No companies want to come in because the courtroom system is so corrupt, both at a federal level and at a state level and a city level. And they put you into an area where you have 3% Republican vote. It's all a rigged deal, just like Fani, F-A-N-I, Fani, with her boyfriend, and I think that's been discredited too. They've been discredited. But think of it. They don't want me to be a little bit nasty. They want to put me in prison. Me. They want to put me. It's never happened before in the history of our country. It's happened in third world countries, but it's never happened here. And they're in danger because you create a precedent for doing that. And once that happens, that's a really bad thing. You know, in the years before, and I've said this a few times, not too much, but with Hillary, she was subpoenaed by Congress to give everything she's got, and she burned it, she acid washed it, bleach bit they call it. She totally scrubbed it, and then they broke everything with hammers, with fire. They burned it. And then she said, I don't have anything. Well, it turned out that she had a lot to give. And everybody said, lock her up, lock her up. And I used to go easy, just easy, easy. Then we won. And I said, wouldn't it be terrible? And you know, I lose. Some people are upset when I did this, but you have to look at it maybe differently now. I say, wouldn't it be terrible to put the wife of the president, former president of the United States, into a prison? Now think of that. Hillary Clinton, she was Secretary of State. She was the wife of a president of the United States who used to be a friend of mine before I ran for, for politics. He was a friend of mine. He used to play my golf course all the time. I have a great golf course right next to their home in Westchester. He used to be there all the time. It was his favorite course. But you know what? I could have done that very easily. She was so guilty. And I said to my people, wouldn't it be terrible to put, I don't know, wouldn't it be terrible to take, and we won the election, wouldn't it be terrible to take a former Secretary of State who was the wife of the President of the United States and put her into a prison? But that's what they want to do with me. And I did nothing wrong. It's all crooked politics and really crooked judges. You know I have a gag order. Do you know I can't even talk about it right now? Do you know that I have a judge who has a gag order? He doesn't want me to talk. And the reason he doesn't want me to talk is because what I say is so devastating and so horrible for him. But think of it. I have a gag order. There's never been a politician in history, I mean, probably for any politician for a city council office. I'm the leading candidate to be president. I won virtually unanimously. I beat everybody. It was the quickest primary in history. There's never been one that was done so early. I had people that were very talented people, and I beat them by 45, 50, 60, 70, 80 points. There was never a close race. Nobody was even close. Good talent. They weren't close. And I'm running against the Democrats. So it's a two-party system, whether we like it or not. Republican, I'm the Republican, and I'm leading. But let's say I'm tied, but I'm leading. I believe I'm leading by a lot more than people think. And I believe we'll be leading by a lot more. And I have a judge who put a gag order on me. So when you ask me a question or when you ask me a question, I can't give you an answer because if I give the answer, they want to put you in jail. He said, we'll put him in jail if he talks beyond the gag order. And this is in a state where, unfortunately, the laws have been very bad and they haven't been upheld by the appellate divisions generally. Although I have one case where we a certain judge, I won't use names, but the Attorney General case where we won 5 appeals on the same case, the most ever trial. It was a ridiculous, horrible decision where you have a very, very biased voting population and a judge whose hatred of Donald Trump was beyond belief. And we won the case, but he ruled a ridiculous amount of money, civil case. Ruled ridiculous. Now, this is what they're doing is interference with an election. They want to interfere. Look at the one thing they want to sentence right before the election takes place. Let's sentence him. Because who's going to vote for him if we sentence him? Let's sentence him right before. No. This is interference with a presidential election at a state level, and it's a state that always goes Democrat. It's interference, and as you know, the Supreme Court ruled recently on immunity, and I'm immune from all of this stuff that they charged me with. But isn't it a terrible thing? And yet Hillary Clinton, when it came time to make a decision, I said, I don't want to put the wife of the President of the United States in prison. I want the country to come together and to be unified. And here it is a few years later, and these people say, let's put him, why? Because I challenge an election? Because I want to challenge an election or some other reason? It's a really disgraceful thing. It's a shame. And it's a very dangerous thing for both parties because once they start that ball rolling, once they started rolling, that's a nasty ball. Yes, please. Please.
Two quick questions here. Nikki Haley told our Brett Baer that Republicans need to stop whining about Kamala Harris, focus on courting those independents, those suburban women, the moderates out there. What do you think of that strategy, and would you consider having Nikki Haley on the campaign trail with you?
Sure. I think that we've done very well. I think that we're hitting a nerve. I think this is a different kind of a race. All we have to do is define our opponent as being a communist or a socialist or somebody that's going to destroy our country. You know, I fought Nikki very hard. I beat her in her own state by legendary numbers. And I get along with her fine. I appreciate that she endorsed me and all of that. No, I think that I think relatively to what they're doing and how radical they are and how, in many ways, how sick they are, I think I'm doing a very calm campaign. I mean, we're here. There's no shouting. Now, you'll say he ranted and raved, and not you, but some of you will say he ranted and raved. I didn't rant and rave. I'm a very calm person, believe it or not. If I wasn't, I probably wouldn't be around anymore, you know, probably wouldn't be around. But no, I think I appreciate her advice. I have to do it my way. You know, I ran against her, and I did it my way. People said I should maybe do it a different way, but I won in South Carolina by numbers that nobody's ever seen before. You know, it wasn't even close. And I think she's a good woman. I'd love to have her support. Yeah, she gave me support, but I'd love to have her go around and campaign.
Quick follow-up on the economy. You mentioned this in your remarks. Vice President Kamala Harris wants to put a ban on price gouging. Do you think that the federal government should be responsible for determining food prices?
Well, not only responsible, they probably can't do it legally, and that will drive up prices. She wants no fracking. Now, she may go and change that. I think she's already changed it. But she wants to have no fracking. I want no fracking. But for her whole life, she said that. No fracking. Then about, I don't know when, a couple of months ago, all of a sudden when she started looking at polls, remember this, she all of a sudden says fracking. I don't think I won Pennsylvania, and I did much better the second time. I won it in 2016, did much better the second time. I know Pennsylvania very well. I don't think there's any way in hell that somebody that's intelligent living in Pennsylvania is going to vote for somebody that basically will eventually end fracking, end fossil fuel. So whether it's Oklahoma or Texas.
Okay, you've been listening to former President Donald Trump take questions from reporters. Among other things, he was asked about his relationship with the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. He claimed that October 7th, the attack by Hamas on Israel, would never have happened if he was president. He was asked about his assassination attempt. He said he did think that God had something to do with it. Maybe God wants me to save the world. He was asked about credit card debt. He has been encouraged by Republicans to stay more focused on the economy. He said that he will fix the problem if he is elected. He didn't give a lot or any details about how he would do that. And most interestingly, he was asked about some of the pleas from Republicans for him to stop personally attacking Kamala Harris. And he said, and I quote, "I think I'm entitled to personal attacks," unquote, because Kamala Harris has called him and his running mate weird. I want to bring in now Democratic strategist and Joel Payne and Republican strategist Matt Gorman to discuss everything we've been hearing. We have heard a lot. So just, right off the top, tell me about some of your thoughts. Matt, is this going to reassure Republicans throughout the party who have been saying you need to stay laser focused on the economy?
He tried, it wasn't certainly what I think always Nikki Haley would want. But, you saw him trying to make some comments there. He had groceries all around him. But as he said it, he put it well. He's not going to change. He's 78 years old. You expect him to change, and it's not going to happen. So it's a matter of, okay, how much can you peel off of folks that are already kind of going for Kamala, or can you win them back, and what can you do with independents?
He can't help himself. He spent maybe the first 10 or 15 minutes of that conversation on some message, talking about the economy, trying to frame Kamala Harris. He got questions. He maybe spent 20, 30 seconds of the answers somewhat on message, and then he riffed for 10 minutes after. And he did it question after question after question. That's a microcosm of the election right now. If Donald Trump is not able to exhibit more message discipline, Kamala Harris and Democrats are going to be able to continue to tell a story that the American people want to hear unchallenged. Right now, that Donald Trump is not going to win an election.
What we heard over and over from him today was Kamala Harris is a socialist. She's a communist. She's worse than a communist. She wants to take us to Soviet policies or Venezuelan policies. Is that something that can stick, or is it so over the top that people will just laugh it off?
We use socialists and that sort of thing when I was at the NRCC with candidates down ballot. Like, I don't think that hyperbole is actually, totally out of bounds. Because I think there's a difference between hyperbole and puffery and personal attacks, right? Like one is unproductive, right? The personal stuff, but also
she's obviously not a communist.
Yeah, I know, but it's hyperbole. Like it's like obviously like the fate of democracy, lying in this. Like we use political argument and hyperbole to boost that. So that I'm okay with a little bit. It's when you kind of get into some other things that I think makes a lot of Republicans, from Kevin McCarthy to Vivek Ramaswamy to Nikki Haley, a little uneasy.
I think it's the style, right? It reminds people, I think, of the less focused Trump. The Trump in 2016, before his campaign had the, fifth reset, where they finally got focused on an economic populist message. It reminds people of the 2020 Trump and the post-2020 Trump, who denied the election and who has spent time attacking recently Brian Kemp in Georgia, in a state that he needs. I think that's really what it probably signals to, I would imagine, some Republicans and to independents who the Kamala Harris message of future-facing, looking forward, joy really appeals to those folks who want to turn the page on this era of politics. Donald Trump plays right into that.
Speaking of joy, Kamala Harris and her running mate, Tim Walz, appeared to try to do a bit of counter-programming today. Yeah. They knew that this press conference was coming, so they released a video of their own of the two of them just kind of chewing the fat, talking to each other about issues, but also just about their personal lives as well, and they released that. So let's take a look at some of that and then talk about it.
I
was hoping
you,
maybe we wouldn't have to.
I called you, Tim.
Yes.
You didn't answer, Tim.
I know.
What happened?
The most important call of my life. It popped up, and we didn't recognize the caller ID, and it went to voicemail.
Hi, this is Tim. I'm not able to answer.
There you go.
It's possible. Thank you.
Hey, Tim, it's Kamala. I really want to talk to you.
So it seems like the goal here is to send a message, we're friends and we're happy.
Yeah, here's the thing, Nancy. You don't have to agree with Kamala Harris on economic policy. You don't have to agree with her on foreign policy. You don't have to agree with Tim Walz's record in Minnesota to see that those are two people who enjoy spending time together, who have personal chemistry, and who I think have a comedy towards each other that I think this country will respond well to. It does not mean they're going to win the election, but it does mean that is a different conversation than the one we witnessed from Bedminster a few minutes ago. And I'd imagine that the folks who are running the Harris campaign want to counter-program what you're hearing from the Trump campaign with that. Vibes alone can't win an election, but it can go far to change the atmospherics around an election.
How worried are Republicans about the vibes?
I worry about the policies and the polls a little more. Vibes don't vote. But what I will say is, look, I worry about the message and how are you kind of coming across? And I think, look, we expect Kamala to have a very good week next week, as people tend to do coming out of convention. We did. But then once that happens, right, you're almost at Labor Day. You're at almost the first the debate between Harris and Trump. How can you fundamentally change dynamics? And how can you maybe, hopefully, make a case against Harris with likely she'll have a couple-point lead, most likely coming out of the convention?
We did learn one very interesting fact from former President Trump in this press conference. He was asked about his rehiring, I guess, of Corey Lewandowski, and he said that Lewandowski's role is going to be, quote, a personal envoy at some level. What is that?
Beats me. But what I also noticed before that, I think it was important, and I'm glad he did it. He did reassert, though, that Corey wasn't coming in to say lay her over. Chris and Susie, who are the co-campaign managers, Chris Latsavita and Susie Wiles, he kind of reaffirmed their stature in the organization. Look, this has been a very well-run campaign, his best of the three. They're obviously on their heels a little bit right now, but again, I think having them at the top does help with a little bit of discipline organization-wide.
I've mentioned joy before. There's a lot of joy in Democratic circles that Corey Lewandowski is near the helms of the Trump campaign right now. I think that influence on Donald Trump feeds his worst instincts and is a bad one, and is one that Democrats will be happy to go against for the next 80-some-odd days.
His mantra is let Trump be Trump.
Yeah, and I think whether Corey Lewandowski was in the organization or not, Trump is 78 years old. You're not going to change him all of a sudden.
Fair enough. Well, Joel Payne, Matt Gorman, thank you so much for sticking around to discuss that press conference with me. I really appreciate it. And that does it for today. I'm going to be back all next week, live from the Democratic National Convention in Chicago. Our special coverage begins at 5 p.m. Eastern and will continue right here on CBS News 24/7 all evening long. And stay with us tonight because the Daily Report with John Dickerson starts right now. Have a good one.